Have you ever fallen in front of someone who was never supposed to see you break? Imagine being the quiet assistant, invisible, careful, never noticed, until one day you fall, not just physically, but completely, in pain, on the floor, scattered, vulnerable, and the man everyone feared for his cold heart kneels beside you. What would you do if the most untouchable person in your world looked at you like you mattered? Would you run, or would you stay and find out why he was crying? This is not just a love story. It is about two people learning to feel again. One fall, one touch, one choice. If you have ever hidden your heart to survive, this story is for you. Take a breath and come closer. It begins with a fall. The building of Brightcore stood tall and quiet beneath the early morning sky of San Francisco. Its steel frame reflected the dim glow of streetlights, and most of the offices inside were dark. But on the lower floors, where the servers hummed without pause, a single light remained on. The server wing never slept. It kept the company breathing while the rest of the world rested. At exactly 2:07 a.m., a soft alarm beeped in the security control room. A red alert blinked on the screen. Motion detected, room 2C. Server access hall. The technician on night duty leaned forward, half expecting a mouse or a flickering wire. Instead, he saw a figure collapsed on the floor. He squinted, clicked the camera feed, and his breath caught. A woman lay still between two server racks. Her arm was stretched outward. One hand clutched a black USB drive. Her body did not move. The technician hesitated, then reached for the phone. The call reached the private line of Blake Caldwell on the 24th floor. He was not asleep. He rarely was. His desk was covered in quarterly projections. His laptop displayed charts and forecasts. A glass of cold coffee sat untouched by his elbow. He answered the call without looking up. "There is someone on the server floor," the technician said. She collapsed. "We believe it is Ava Moore." Blake paused. His eyes lifted from the screen for the first time in hours. Ava Moore. The name registered, faintly. He had seen her before. Neat clothes, low voice, always walking quickly, as if she did not want to be in anyone's way. He stood, slowly. His chair rolled back against the wall. The elevator ride to the basement felt longer than usual. The lights above blinked in rhythm as he descended. His own reflection stared back at him in the elevator mirror. Impeccable suit, expression unreadable. The basement hall was quiet, cold. He walked past locked doors and blinking machines. Room 2C was open, and there she was, Ava Moore, lying still on the gray tile floor. The servers around her hummed softly, indifferent. She looked small. Her face was pale. A strand of hair had fallen across her cheek. Her lips were slightly parted, as if caught mid-breath. Blake approached. He crouched beside her and placed his hand on her forehead. Cool, damp with sweat. She had no wounds, no bruises, only the unmistakable stillness of someone who had gone too far without rest. The USB drive remained in her hand. He did not move it. Security arrived a moment later. They moved quickly, calling emergency services, but Blake did not leave. When the paramedics arrived, they lifted her onto the stretcher. One of them asked if he was family. He shook his head. He was not, but something in his chest said otherwise. He followed them up the service elevator and watched as they wheeled her out into the early dawn. Then he went back to his office. He sat down. The reports were still open, the graphs unchanged, but none of it mattered. The image of her on that cold floor would not leave his mind. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city was waking. A bus rumbled down the street. A man jogged past with headphones, lights turned on, one by one, in nearby apartments, people starting their day, people with stories. He thought about Ava. What had she been doing there at that hour? Why had no one noticed? He pulled up her employee file. Hired 3 years ago. No missed deadlines, no complaints, low profile, logged 22 hours of overtime in the past week alone. He frowned. Had anyone asked her why she stayed late? Had anyone offered help? He could not remember ever speaking to her beyond a polite nod. Never asked about her life. Never wondered about the woman behind the perfect scheduling emails. But she had been there, all this time, working late, quietly, invisible, and now, broken. He looked again at the USB drive she had held. What was so important that she had stayed until 2 in the morning to finish it? He felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Guilt. Not because the system had failed, but because he had not seen her. He had built Brightcore from nothing, from shelter floors and borrowed computers. He had worked through hunger, through failure, through every sleepless night, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it meant to be fragile. He had built walls, thick ones, but Ava's silence, her collapse, had cracked something in them. He stood there in his office as the morning light crept across the floor, and for the first time in years, Blake Caldwell did not feel like a CEO. He felt like a man who had missed something important, someone, and he did not know yet what that would mean. But he knew this much. Nothing would be the same again. Long before the lights of Brightcore came on each morning, Ava Moore had already begun her day. Her small apartment sat on the corner of Ashbury Street, 3rd floor, no elevator. The stairs creaked, especially in winter. The windows were single pane. When the wind blew, it whispered through the walls like an old friend. Inside, everything was clean. Simple. The kitchen was small, but the stove worked. A kettle sat on the counter, always ready. Beside the sink, a calendar marked in pencil held the rhythm of her days: work, groceries, medication pickup, call with mom's doctor, review reports. Her mother slept in the next room. Mrs. Moore had once been a music teacher. She used to hum Bach while folding laundry, and her hands moved with grace even when arthritis made them stiff. But 3 years ago, after a stroke, everything changed. She needed full-time care. Ava became both daughter and caretaker. There was no one else. Each morning, Ava helped her mother bathe and dress. She prepared toast with jam and warm milk, turned on the old radio in the kitchen. Then she left, quietly, always a little earlier than needed. She preferred walking to the bus stop alone before the city woke up. She liked the stillness. At work, Ava was never late. She wore simple clothes, navy, gray, soft brown, her hair pulled back, no makeup except a bit of lip balm. She carried a canvas bag with pens, notebooks, and a flask of tea. She said good morning to the front desk, smiled when spoken to, kept her head down when she walked past upper management. Most people liked her, but few remembered her. She did not mind. Or at least, she told herself she did not. Her desk on the 9th floor faced the glass wall. Sunlight hit it mid-morning, just before the executive meeting started. Ava liked those minutes. She watched birds land on the window ledge. She made lists on her yellow notepad, schedules, reminders, tiny poems sometimes, when no one was looking. No one knew she wrote poetry. That was hers. She had written her first poem the night her father left. It was about a candle burning in the rain. She still remembered every line. At Brightcore, Ava managed calendar systems. She organized meetings. She proofread proposals. She listened. She remembered who drank which coffee, who hated the color green on slides, who always needed a 2-minute reminder before walking into a room. She was the kind of person offices depended on, quietly, without thanks. Some evenings, when her work was done, she stayed behind, not because she wanted to, but because it was easier than going home to more responsibility. In the office, there was order, control, the hum of machines, the clicking of keyboards. At home, there were bills. There were lab results she did not want to open. There was worry. She kept granola bars in her drawer, notebooks under her desk, headphones for music that no one else could hear. Her favorite place was the small corner lounge outside the server wing. No one ever went there. It smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. The couch was old but soft. Sometimes. She sat there for 10 minutes before heading home, breathing. She had dreams, once, to teach literature, to travel, to write a book of poems about women who never raised their voices, but always carried the weight. But life had other plans. Still, she found pieces of those dreams in the quiet things, in the way sunlight hit the conference table at 4 o'clock, in the sound of shoes tapping down the hallway, in the soft nod of appreciation from someone who said, "Thank you for catching that mistake." Little things. That was how Ava lived. By choosing what mattered in moments, others walked past. So when the systems glitched that week, when an error appeared in the storage logs, when the lead tech said he was too busy to fix it before the quarterly board review, Ava volunteered, not loudly, not for praise. She just said, "I can take a look." No one questioned it. She worked late, quietly, logged each change, double-checked backups, created a recovery protocol no one had asked for. Then came that last night. Her mother had a minor panic episode after dinner. Ava stayed up, calming her down. She almost did not go to work, but she did. Because she had promised herself to finish the job. Because she believed that being dependable meant something. Because she thought someone would notice. And maybe, deep down, she just needed to feel that she mattered. Blake Caldwell did not always live in a corner office with a view of the city. There was a time, not long ago, when he slept on the cold floor of a community shelter on Folsom Street. He remembered the sharp smell of bleach, the sound of coughing, the way voices dropped to whispers after midnight. He was 17 when he left home. His mother had done what she could, but kindness could not stretch a paycheck. When his stepfather lost his job, the arguments began. Loud at first, then sharp, then dangerous. Blake walked out with nothing but a backpack and a cracked phone. He did not look back. He found work in kitchens, then in delivery jobs. He saved every dollar he could. At night, he taught himself to code using free internet at the public library. He built small things at first, a reminder app, a budgeting tool. Then, a simple cloud-based scheduling program that caught the attention of a local investor. From there, things changed fast. He slept less, spoke less, built more. He watched as Brightcore grew from a rented studio into a multi-floor empire. He hired smart, fired fast, delivered results. People admired him, or feared him, sometimes both. He kept his personal life locked behind silence. No romantic attachments, no close friendships. Even his assistant of 5 years did not know where he lived. He was efficient, calculated, reliable, but behind the structure and success, something else lived quietly inside Blake, an old fear. He feared losing control. He feared becoming dependent. He feared letting someone in, only to be left behind. So he shut the door early, Before anyone could even knock, he built his world around logic. Spreadsheets, deadlines, predictable variables, and it worked. Until it did not. That morning, after Ava Moore was taken to the hospital, Blake sat in his office, untouched coffee by his side, and stared at the screen. But his mind wandered to her face, to the quiet way she had always moved through the halls, to the fact that he could not remember the last time he had asked someone, "Are you all right?" He opened her file again. There was nothing unusual. No complaints, no requests, not even a missed day. It was as if she had existed only in function. But now, he wondered who she really was. What did she care about? What kept her up at night? Why had she not said anything? Then again, he had taught his company, not by saying it aloud, but through how he led. That silence was strength, that results mattered more than people, that emotion had no place in high-stakes decisions. And now here he was, wondering how long a person could stay invisible before someone noticed they were breaking. He stood and walked across the room. A shelf of awards lined the wall. Glass plaques, framed certificates, industry recognition. He ran his hand across one of them. It meant nothing right now, because Ava was not a number on a spreadsheet. She was a person, a quiet one, but not voiceless. He just had never listened. Blake sat again, slowly. For the first time in years, he felt unsure. He remembered being 17, alone, hungry, sitting on a park bench and watching people walk past. No one asked if he was okay. No one saw him. Now, all these years later, he had become the one who looked away, not out of cruelty, but because it felt easier, cleaner. He took a long breath. He would call the hospital. He would find out if she was awake. He would visit, not as a CEO, not as a man fixing a problem, but as someone who finally understood what it meant to be missed. And maybe he would start asking questions again, not just the kind that filled reports, but the kind that opened doors. Like, how are you, and what do you need? And what did we stop seeing when we started running? It had been a long day. The kind that starts with spilled coffee and ends with quiet disappointment. Ava Moore sat alone at her desk as the clock inched past 8:30 p.m. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. The lights in the hallway flickered on timers. The hum of the building had changed. Quieter now. More honest. Her computer screen glowed in the dimness. She blinked against the ache behind her eyes. She should have gone home. Her mother had left 3 voicemails already. One from the home nurse, one just silent breathing, one where she heard her mother whisper her name as if in sleep, but Ava stayed. She told herself it was because of the backup protocols. The system glitch had resurfaced again that afternoon, and no one seemed to take it seriously. Just a minor hiccup. They said, but Ava knew better. If the servers went down during next week's quarterly review, the entire board would be breathing fire. The lead tech had brushed her off with a tired shrug. "It is above your pay grade," he had said. That was exactly why she stayed. Not to prove a point, but because someone had to care. She leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes for a moment. Her body ached in quiet ways, the kind that never make the news, but erode something important over time. Her shoulders were tight, her wrists stiff. Her stomach had forgotten dinner. She reached into her drawer, pulled out a half-eaten granola bar, dry, but it would do. The screen buzzed, a new alert. Ava stood, stretched. Her cardigan was still draped over the back of her chair. She slipped it on. The warmth helped. A little. She crossed the floor to the secondary server room. The corridor was darker than usual, half lit by motion sensors. Her steps echoed in the emptiness. She passed the wall of windows. Outside, the city pulsed with scattered lights, distant sirens, a few lonely taxis tracing lazy lines down Fifth Avenue. Inside, it felt like another world. In the server room, the hum grew louder, rows of blinking machines, cold air, the scent of plastic and dust. She moved to the back panel, line by line. She checked the patch connections, cross-referenced server logs, reran the backup config. Something still looked wrong. The secondary storage mirrored data inconsistently. She frowned, tried again. A cable tucked behind a console had slipped. She leaned forward to reset it. A pop sounded above her, then a flicker of the overhead light. Then nothing. The room went black, total darkness. Then came the pain. It was sharp, sudden, crushing. A metal support beam struck her shoulder as it fell from the loose ceiling grid. The floor met her hard, her head hit first, then her back, then the world tilted. For a few moments, there was no sound, just her own breathing, ragged, afraid. She tried to move. Her right side felt numb. Her leg would not respond. Panic bloomed. Slowly, quietly, the way water creeps into walls. She called out. Once, twice. No one answered. No one was left in the building. She had not told anyone she would be staying. Ava pressed her hand to her head. Sticky, wet, blood. She tasted fear in the back of her throat. How long until someone found her? Would anyone even notice? The building locked down automatically after 10 Her badge would still register her inside, but she knew how easy it was to overlook quiet names. She blinked, tried to stay awake, but the dark pressed in, soft and endless. Somewhere deep inside her mind, memories stirred. The first time she stayed, after hours. A day when her mother had been sick and she needed extra cash. She had taken on filing tasks no one else wanted. She had eaten crackers and stared at spreadsheets, telling herself it was worth it. She had done this for years, chose responsibility over rest, obligation over joy, invisible over seen. She wanted to believe it mattered. But now, lying cold on a data room floor, Ava wondered, had anyone ever truly seen her? The sun would rise in a few hours. Maybe someone would come in early. Maybe someone would find her. Or maybe not. She let out a breath, closed her eyes. If this was the end, at least she had done her best. And then, a sound, footsteps, the creak of the outer door. Someone was calling her name. Soft, urgent. Ava, are you in here? The voice of Blake Caldwell, sharp, against the silence. She tried to answer, tried to speak. Her throat was dry, her lips cracked. She could not make a sound. Light flickered back on. He was there, and for the first time since she fell, she saw his face, not cold, not calculated, just afraid. For her, Ava Moore awoke to the sound of soft beeping. It came in slow intervals, calm, measured. She blinked against the fluorescent ceiling. Pale light, clean white walls, the faint scent of antiseptic. Hospital. Her mouth was dry, her body heavy. Her shoulder ached, her leg was wrapped tight, her head was quiet. But in that strange, echoing way that comes after a fall, memory returned like scattered pieces. The server room, the cable, the crash, darkness, and then his voice. She turned her head slowly. Everything hurt, but she could move. That was something. And then she saw him, sitting in the armchair across the room. Blake Caldwell. His suit jacket hung over the back of the chair, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, not in the usual, overworked way, but like someone who had not stopped worrying in hours. His eyes were closed, his hands clasped together. He was praying, or trying to remember how. Ava stared at him. It did not make sense. What was he doing here? He was the man who never spoke unless necessary. The man who passed her desk each day without a glance, and now he was here, in the stillness of her hospital room. She tried to speak. Her throat cracked. Blake looked up instantly. Ava. The way he said her name surprised her. Soft, like it mattered. "You are awake," he said, standing. His hands hovered at his sides. Unsure. She nodded. Barely. "What happened?" "There was a collapse in the server room," he said. "A ceiling support gave way. You were unconscious when I found you. You found me. I called for help, rode with you in the ambulance." His voice was calm, but his eyes gray. Unreadable eyes held something else. Regret. Maybe fear. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why were you even there?" He looked down. "I could not stop thinking about you. I checked the access logs. When I saw your badge still active, I came back." Ava turned her gaze toward the window. The afternoon light spilled gently through closed blinds. No one had ever come back for her before. Not like this. She felt the sting of tears and blinked them away. Blake stepped closer. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not just for what happened, for everything before it." She looked at him. He continued. "For walking past you. For not seeing how much you carried. For creating a place where silence was rewarded and exhaustion ignored." Ava swallowed. The lump in her throat ached. "You built something remarkable," she said, "but it has a cost, and I was willing to pay it." "That is not something I should have allowed," he replied. A long pause stretched between them. "You were right," he said, finally. "Someone had to care, and it should not have been only you." The words felt heavy. Honest. "I am not used to being seen." She admitted, "Not really. I know the feeling." Blake replied. She turned toward him again. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Recognition of something deeper. Wounds carried alone for too long. Blake sat again. This time, closer. "Your mother," he asked gently. "The emergency contact in your file. Is she all right?" Ava hesitated. "She is sick," she said. "Late-stage lupus. I take care of her when I am not here. It is why I never take time off." Blake nodded. "You should have said something. I did not want pity or special treatment. You deserved care," he said. Not pity. Silence again. But it was different now. Not awkward. Just full. After a while, Ava spoke again. "You do not seem like the man people describe. And what do they say that you are cold, ruthless, emotionless?" Blake let out a breath, almost a laugh. "I used to think that was strength, until I saw you lying on that floor." Ava looked away, blinking fast. "Do you remember what you said I'd do?" "You called my name." He nodded. "You sounded scared." I was. More silence. Then why she asked, because I realized I had built a world where people like you disappear. His voice broke. Just a little. And I could not let that happen. Ava closed her eyes. Let the warmth of the words sink in. No one had ever said that to her. Not in all her years. He had seen her. At last. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Blake Caldwell stepped out into the executive floor of Brightcore. He had returned, but something felt wrong, not broken, just unfamiliar, like walking into a home you once lived in. Everything was in place, but the air did not feel like yours anymore. He nodded briefly to passing assistants. No one met his eyes. They never had. That was the design. He moved quickly to his office, closed the door behind him. The silence pressed in. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, checked emails, typed responses. Everything mechanical, efficient. But his fingers hesitated. His mind drifted. Ava Moore, in a hospital bed. Asking why he had been afraid, the image would not leave him. And neither would the feeling. He had been afraid, not of lawsuits, or reputational damage, or quarterly losses, but of losing her. Even now, the thought made something in his chest twist. He stood and walked to the window. Below, the city moved as always. Buses, taxis, pedestrians with headphones, everyone rushing toward something. He used to be one of them. Now, he was not sure where he belonged. He turned from the window, looked around the room, awards, books, custom furniture, everything perfect and empty. His office had once made him feel powerful. Now, it felt like armor he no longer wanted to wear. He sat again, rested his hands on the desk, then closed the laptop. He could not pretend anymore. Something had shifted, in him, in what he wanted. He thought about the team, about the culture he had built. Sharp, fast, quiet. People worked hard here, but did they feel seen? Did they feel safe? He had thought results were enough, that building something lasting meant demanding excellence. But excellence without care was just a machine. And people were not machines. He had learned that from Ava, not through what she said, but through what she endured. Blake stood again, crossed the room, picked up the internal phone. "Marcia, cancel my meetings this afternoon," he said. A pause. "Yes, all of them." Another pause. "No, I am not sick. I just need some time to think." He hung up, then walked out. He passed the conference rooms, the elevators, the glass walls. He saw people glancing up from their desks, curious, cautious. It was rare for him to walk the floor, rarer still to look uncertain. But he kept walking, until he reached the common area on the 4th floor, a place he had not visited in years. Open tables, plants, a coffee station, and people, staff he barely recognized. He stood there a moment, then sat at an empty table, no laptop, no phone, just a man in a dress shirt with rolled sleeves and 1,000 thoughts he did not know how to say. After a few minutes, someone approached, Miriam, from Product Strategy. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, hesitant. "Blake," he replied. "Please." She blinked. "Are you all right?" He nodded, slowly, just needed to sit somewhere different. He said. She smiled. "That happens to me sometimes, too." She sat across from him, tentative. They talked, not about metrics, not about deadlines, but about her dog, her garden, a new book she loved. Others joined, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. The CEO had come downstairs, and he was listening. By the end of the hour, Blake had heard more about his employees than he had in the past 3 years combined. He returned to his office with a full heart and a quiet mind, but something still nagged at him, a sense that the place that bore his name had outgrown the version of himself who had created it. He could not fix it all in a day, but he could start. That night, alone in his penthouse, he pulled out a legal pad, old school, simple. He wrote, change meeting structure, create feedback channels, hire internal counselor, leadership workshops, cultural reset. Then he added something that surprised even him. Ask Ava what she would do. He looked at the list, smiled. A plan was forming, not for the company, but for the people. And for the first time in years, Blake Caldwell felt like a leader again, not of systems, but of souls. It was almost 5 in the evening. The sun had begun to slip low in the sky. A soft amber hue spilled through the narrow windows of Ava Moore's apartment, casting long shadows across the floor. The scent of warm tea lingered in the air, mingling with quiet music, playing from her small Bluetooth speaker. She sat on her couch, a soft brace around her left shoulder and a cast on her lower leg, a blanket draped loosely over her lap. Outside, someone knocked, once, then again, more gently. She frowned slightly. She was not expecting anyone. Not at this hour. Ava shifted forward and opened the door. And there he stood, Blake Caldwell. Not in a tailored suit, not with a guarded stare. He wore a simple navy sweater, jeans, and a hesitation she had never seen in him before. He held a paper bag in one hand. "Hi," he said, voice quieter than usual. "Hi," she replied, surprised. "I hope this is not too strange," he continued. I wanted to check in, without paperwork, without anyone else watching." Ava stepped aside. "You can come in." The apartment was small, but warm. Shelves lined with books, photos, a few plants, some struggling, some thriving. Blake set the bag on the kitchen counter. "I brought chicken soup, not from a store. I made it." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You cook?" "Very badly," he admitted. "But I followed a recipe this time." She smiled. "Thank you." He looked around. "This is nice. Peaceful." "It is mine," she said. "First space I ever had on my own. I took extra shifts at the coffee shop for 6 months to cover the deposit." Blake nodded. He looked impressed, but said nothing. They moved to the couch. He waited until she sat before joining her. The silence between them was not awkward now. It felt thoughtful. Full. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Still sore," she said. "Still processing." He nodded. "Same." They sat in quiet for a beat. Then Ava asked the question that had been pressing against her mind since the hospital. "Why are you really here?" Blake looked at his hands. "I could tell you I came to apologize again, or to check on your recovery. But the truth is, I wanted to see you, outside of work, as a person, not a name on payroll, not a line item on an org chart." Ava let that settle in. She had never heard him speak like that, not even close. "And what changed?" she asked gently. "You did." He turned to face her. "You stayed late because no one else would. You got hurt because our culture rewards silence. And you made me feel something I did not expect." He paused. "I have not been myself for a long time, Ava, but the truth is, maybe I never knew who that self really was." She looked at him carefully. "Do you still believe in the version of yourself who built that company?" Blake shook his head. "I believe in the work, the mission, but not the methods. Not anymore." He looked around her living room. "This," he said, motioning toward the cozy space, "feels more alive than anything in my entire penthouse." Ava chuckled softly. "That is because you live in a glass museum." He smiled. "Exactly." They shared that smile for a moment. Something inside it felt easy. Then Ava grew quiet. "My mother used to say that some people speak loudest by what they do not say." Blake nodded. "She sounds wise. She is tired, Ava said, but still strong. I think that is where I learned to keep going. Blake leaned forward slightly. And what keeps you going now? Ava considered. For a long time, it was duty, then survival. Lately, I have been wondering if there is more than that. She looked at him. I want more than that. Blake did not look away. I want that for you too. And for a second, the air between them felt different, not heavy, not rushed, just full of something unspoken. Possibility. They both looked down. Then Ava said, quietly, You do not have to be perfect to be present. Blake met her eyes again. Neither do you. She smiled. I think we are both a little broken. Then maybe, he said, we are the right kind of broken for each other. The timer on the stove beeped. Blake stood and walked to the kitchen. Soup is ready, he called, ladling it into bowls. She followed slowly, carefully. At the table, they ate. Not much was said, but the silence now was full of warmth. And for the first time in years, both felt seen, really seen. The sky that morning was soft gray, the kind of quiet cloud cover that made the world seem slower, gentler. Ava Moore sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea steaming beside her, a stack of unopened mail pushed aside. In front of her lay a canvas board, blank, untouched. For weeks. She had looked at it every day, but never lifted the brush. Until now. The pain in her shoulder had lessened. The cast on her leg was still there, but she could move enough to sit, shift, lean in. And more than that, she wanted to. The paints were old, some tubes barely had color left in them, but they were hers. She had not painted in years, not since college, not since life had become about rent and caregiving and overtime. But something Blake had said during his visit had lingered. You do not have to be perfect to be present. Maybe that applied to color too. She squeezed out a bit of ochre, then blue, then a touch of deep crimson. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the brush. Then they steadied. She did not think. She just moved. Soft strokes, short lines, something abstract, something emotional, something unfinished. But it was hers. An hour passed. Then two. She lost herself in the rhythm. And when she finally looked down, her fingers were smudged with color, and her chest felt lighter, not fixed, but less tight. The knock on the door surprised her. When she opened it, Blake stood there again, same sweater as before, but a different kind of look in his eyes, gentler, curious. I brought you something, he said. He held out a bag. Inside was a small wooden box of new paints, professional grade, with a note taped to the top, for whatever you need to say. Even if words do not come. Ava blinked, her throat tightened. She stepped back to let him in. He saw the canvas on the table, the streaks of blue, the unfinished shapes. You started, he said, a note of wonder in his voice. She nodded. It felt like time. He walked over and looked at the painting, not like a critic, like someone trying to hear a story. I used to paint, he said softly. That surprised her. Landscapes, he continued, big skies, empty roads. I stopped when my father died. Life became linear after that. Ava looked at him. Do you miss it? Every day, Blake admitted. But I did not know how to go back. You could start, she said. Today. He smiled. With what I do not even remember how to hold a brush. You do not forget, she said. You just think you did. She opened the paint box, chose a blank canvas, handed him a brush. They sat side by side. No rules, no goals, Just space, time, color. Blake hesitated at first, then dipped the brush into green. A slow stroke, then another. I remember this, he said quietly. The quiet inside it. They did not talk much as they painted, but the silence between them was rich. They shared colors, passed water cups, laughed softly when Blake dropped a glob of red onto his knee. By the end of the afternoon, they had 2 unfinished pieces. But something else felt more complete than before. Ava washed her hands at the sink. Blake stood near the doorway, canvas in hand. I have not felt this calm in years, he said. Me either, Ava replied. He glanced at the door. I should go, but he did not move. She walked over to him. Their eyes met. The space between them changed again. This time, there was no need to speak. Not yet. Just a quiet understanding. The beginning of something. Blake stepped closer. I do not know where this leads, he said honestly, but I want to find out. If you want that too. Ava paused. Then said, I think we both have things to unlearn, and things to remember, he added. She nodded. As he left, he looked back one more time, the paint still on his fingers, and the door still open behind him. Monday came quietly. Too quietly. Ava Moore walked into the office building with her head held a little higher than before. Her cast had been removed, replaced by a soft brace. Her steps were slower, but steady. She greeted the receptionist with a polite smile. But something felt different, not in her body, in the air, the way people looked at her. Too long, too quickly. Whispers buzzed as she walked past clusters of desks. Eyes darted away when she glanced in their direction. Her pulse quickened. Inside the elevator, she stared at the glowing numbers. By the time she reached the 15th floor, her stomach was tight with something she could not name. She sat at her desk, booted up her computer. Then she saw it. An email, subject line, meeting with human resources, 11 o'clock. No explanation, just a time. She swallowed. Across the room, Marcia, from Human Resources, looked down quickly as their eyes met. The morning dragged. At 10:55, Ava stood and walked toward the glass-walled meeting room. Blake Caldwell was already there, standing, hands in his pockets. He looked tired, but calm. Marcia gestured for Ava to sit. Then she cleared her throat. There have been questions, she began, about the nature of your relationship. Ava's breath caught. Blake said nothing. Marcia continued. We are not making accusations, but there are optics, comments from staff, concerns about favoritism, about ethics. Blake stepped forward. I asked Ava to stay late the night she got hurt, he said. That was my decision. No one else was responsible. Marcia blinked. That is not the point. I know, Blake replied, but it matters to me that we get the full picture. Marcia looked at Ava. Do you feel pressured in any way? Coerced? Ava's eyes widened. No, not at all. And has anything changed between you since her return from leave? Marcia asked Blake directly. He hesitated, then said, yes. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was honest. We have become close, he added. Outside the office. Marcia exhaled. Then we need to discuss disclosure, boundaries, and potential reassignment. Blake looked at Ava. I do not want to hide anymore, he said quietly. Neither did she. That afternoon, rumors moved faster than emails. Janet from legal whispered to Greg in information technology. By 3 o'clock, Ava felt every hallway glance like a weight. Some were curious, some judgmental. some even cruel. But she walked on. Blake held a town hall meeting that evening, an all-staff gathering, rare, unscheduled. When he stood at the podium, the room fell quiet. He looked at the people he had hired, led, often from a distance, and then he spoke. In recent days, there has been talk, he began, about my relationship with Ava Moore. No one breathed. It is true. We have grown close, and I will not lie or pretend anymore. He scanned the room, not with power, but with vulnerability. I have made mistakes, not in feeling something real, but in waiting too long to admit it. He stepped back. Ava stood at the side wall. Her heart pounded. The room stayed still, until someone clapped. Then another, and another. Not everyone, not right away, but enough. Later that night, Ava found Blake in the break room, staring out the window. I did not expect applause, he said. Me either, she whispered. But you did it. So did you. He turned to her. I do not know what happens next. Neither do I, she replied, then added, but I am not afraid of being seen anymore. He nodded slowly, then reached for her hand, and this time, they did not let go. 1 year later, the building looked the same from the outside. Tall glass windows, clean edges, a polished exterior that reflected the morning sun, but inside, things had changed. So had the people. Ava Moore walked through the quiet corridor of the new Community Literacy Center. Her steps echoed lightly against the wood floors. This place had once been a vacant wing of the Caldwell Tower. Now, it had become a space for stories. Not just the ones printed on paper, but the ones still waiting to be written. Children laughed from the reading room nearby. Volunteers sorted books. A young mother asked Ava about a workshop schedule. Ava smiled and answered with ease. Confidence had become part of her now. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, rooted, like something that had grown slowly through stone. She walked toward her office, a corner room that used to store unused equipment. Now, the windows opened to the city skyline. On the walls, there were paintings, not famous ones she and Blake had created. Together, abstract, colorful, full of movement, each canvas a reflection of something felt, not just seen. Ava sat at her desk, looked out at the rooftop garden across the street, where this had all begun. That evening, the garden was filled with light. Strings of small bulbs hung above benches and trees. It was a soft celebration, nothing grand, nothing formal, but meaningful. Blake Caldwell stood at the edge of the space, helping an older guest find her chair. He wore no tie, no tailored suit, just a gray sweater and rolled-up sleeves. He looked up and saw Ava arriving. Her dress was simple, sky blue, the color she always painted first. She walked toward him, calm, steady. When she reached him, she took his hand. No words needed. Blake turned to the small crowd. Thank you for being here, he said. 1 year ago, we almost lost sight of what mattered. He paused, looked at Ava, and then we saw it. In each other, in ourselves. He motioned toward the banner behind them. It read, The Moore Caldwell Foundation, Stories That Grow. Laughter and applause followed. But Ava's eyes stayed on Blake. Later, they sat on a bench at the edge of the garden. No speeches, just the two of them, side by side, watching the lights flicker in the trees. Blake rested his hand over hers. I still think about that night, he said. The first time I saw you fall, and the first time you let yourself care. Ava added gently. He nodded. It was never about the fall, he said. It was always about what came after. Ava turned to him. You once asked what we were building, she said. He smiled. I think we know now. She leaned her head on his shoulder. They did not need a map anymore, just the garden beyond the glass, and each other, far above the city, in the top floor of the building, where they had once hidden everything. A light was still on. Inside, a canvas rested near the window, a painting in progress. It showed a woman with paint on her fingers, and a man standing nearby, both facing a blooming garden, but not holding hands, not touching, just standing in peace, together. Blake would finish the painting later. For now, he had everything he needed. Below, Ava waved to a child leaving the center with a new book, then looked up at the sky, blue, expansive, like a life unfolding. Not perfect, but true, and still growing. Sometimes, the most powerful moments in life come when we least expect them. Ava was quiet, careful, always doing the right thing. Blake was successful, respected, but alone. They lived in the same building, walked the same halls, yet never truly saw each other, not until a fall broke through the walls they both had built. This story reminds us that no one is too old, too quiet, or too guarded to be seen, or to feel again. We all carry pain. We all hide parts of ourselves. But sometimes, a single act of care, a gentle touch, a truth spoken out loud, can open the door to something healing. It is never too late to start again, to choose kindness, to listen, to look someone in the eyes and really see them, not for what they do, but for who they are. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it begins with a fall. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If it touched your heart, even just a little, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more stories that heal, connect, and remind us of what truly matters. We are grateful you are here, and we hope to see you again very soon.